I wanna try and take in all the highs, embrace them for more than a moment's time. I want you, please don't move when I push you away. I know I contradict myself some days, but will you ride the lows with me?
Welcome to Mental Health News Radio. I am your host, Kristin Sunanta Walker. Our goal is to help discussions about mental health be a regular part of your daily life, no different than discussions about physical health. Mental illness can be a topic of discussion under the umbrella of mental health, along with so many other topics. This show is the original program on mentalhealthnewsradionetwork.com. Our network of shows are played in over 180 countries and cover more topics under that umbrella than you can possibly imagine. We were talking about mental health long before it became cool and popular to talk about, and thank goodness it has become so popular. We have incredible guests, advocates, patients, experts, people. Thank you for tuning in and enjoy our intro music, a song named Lows, written by Aubrey Toon. You can find her music at www.aubreytoone.com.
That night when I started praying, I cried, will you ride the lows with me? Will you ride the lows with me? When I'm down, my vision gets blurry.
Hi, listeners. I have an awesome guest today. Awesome because she's been on the network forever. Awesome because of, well, that's like triple thing down the list. Awesome because she's an awesome human being and has an amazing show. And we haven't talked since before. I think we talked during the pandemic, but anyway, we haven't had a chance between life stuff going on to really connect, and now we are. So Leah Barrett with the show Precarious, thank you for coming on my show.
Yeah, I was just saying before we started, it's so good to hear your voice and connect. Yeah, it's been, I know exactly when we talked because you kicked my show off with being a guest on yours, and it was right before the pandemic hit. I feel like the next 2 weeks we were all in lockdown. And so it was like February 2019. Yeah.
Yeah. Or February 2020. Yeah. It was.
Yes, 2020. Yep, 2020.
Yeah, and I mean, talk about like a complete shift. And I got off all social media in May. I'm sorry, listeners. I know you've heard that, but Leah hasn't heard it.
No.
I'm completely off all social media since May of last year.
Wow. Okay.
And I won't go on. I mean, Regina, which I think you know who Regina is.
Oh, yeah.
The amazing Regina. Yeah, she does everything. And I mean, she has to talk. I don't do this anymore, but for a while I was like, let's just get rid of it all. It's so not important. I don't want anything to do with it. It gives me anxiety to even think about it. And she's like, Kristin, do you know how much money that you have spent on this? And you have this many followers? Like, no, I refuse. If you want to do that, then you have to hire somebody else to take it down. And I was like, okay, fine. But I'm not on it myself.
Yeah.
For a lot of reasons, but I can't handle all that system noise, or I don't want to say can't. I don't want to handle what feels like a lot of system noise.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you. It's, I dip my toe in the water of it daily because I too, promote my business and the podcast, and the cost benefit ratio, I don't know. I feel like it's,
yeah.
Yeah. And I work with Regina as well. And she's, got her business sense about it. And I hear it all, but I'm like, if I cannot feel what you're talking about, which is this static, that would be good. So, yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. I'm okay to go on like the Mental Health News Radio network pages and just kind of look and see what's going on, but I don't go into my personal Instagram or any of which I think she still manages. I don't even know what she manages, but I pay the bill and I don't look, but I'm okay with going there and sort of being a voyeur for maybe 5 minutes once a month. But other than that, ooh, yeah, things got so noisy, didn't they, in
Mhm.
2020?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So the
And
volume was too
yeah.
much.
Yeah. And most of us have our own noise. And so to not recognize that, bringing more of that into what we're already managing is not helpful and kind of unhealthy, actually.
Yeah, yeah. I think in terms of reaching, that's the only reason that I keep it going, is because I do know that it tells people about the network. It tells people about shows on the network.
Hmm.
It tells people about, it's an informer of, look, here's all these great people. Look at their advocacy. Go,
Yes.
go, go.
Yeah.
That's the only reason. That's literally the only reason that I keep the company stuff going, because that it does reach people.
Yeah. I don't, I'm going to say one more thing because I'm not even sure this is the topic you want to talk about, but I've been thinking about this lately because I feel like I'm connecting with you on actually I feel like you're a little further ahead on me making this personal decision. But what I'm
Mm,
noticing is that something like social media is something to be very intentional about, to sort of understand
mm.
how you're using it, what your appetite is for it. Again, that cost benefit ratio. And to not have intention, to not know what your appetite is, to not know what your purpose is, um, it it can be dangerous if you don't understand what your own vulnerability is to it. So I guess what I want to clarify for listeners is
Yes.
I'm not demonizing it. Like I
Right.
don't have this broad sweeping, it's, the devil sort of thing. I think most of us though don't recognize what we're needing or getting from it until something, maybe never, but for both of us, I think it's like, okay, this is, I need to recalibrate my relationship with this and I need to come back into it with intention and I need to understand how I'm going to use it. And I hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had it used against me,
Mm.
in horrible, horrible ways. Just being putting my just for the I don't know why. It was an interesting lesson. I don't say that from a victim standpoint,
Mhm.
but some things happened where people posted stuff. They got angry, about some business thing I didn't want to get into with them, and their way to do that was to just say all this horrible stuff. So there's,
Mhm.
that happened, and I was like, well, I didn't die and I didn't lose my business,
Yeah.
and it was certainly uncomfortable. So
Mhm.
it does have a nasty element. It
Yeah.
can have a nasty element to it. And the people that I know that really do stay on it are so engrossed in it still, and it's a place to go fight.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, I just, you know what? No,
Yeah. Mhm.
I got so much going on in my personal life that's wonderful and also, challenging, that I'm very intentional. I like the words that you're using, intentional around where I will put the fight that I do utilize,
Mhm. Yeah.
and how it's utilized,
Yeah.
to protect people that I love, to help them get through what they're going through, that kind of thing. I'm very intentional about, okay, well, if I allow myself to be drained in these other ways because of some comment someone made or whatever, like you said, showing you what your vulnerabilities are.
Yeah.
If I allow that to take me in this direction, I have less of a fight helping this person stay literally alive.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what's more important?
Right.
The other thing. You know what I mean?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Easy to, go, yeah, that's just not important. So,
Mhm. Mhm.
yeah. But anyway, tell our listeners, because I did a horrible job of introducing you. Tell our listeners what you do and what your show's about.
Yeah. Thank you. I am a licensed clinical social worker, another way of saying psychotherapist, mental health provider in a private practice in the state of Colorado. I'm also trained as a master's level nutritionist. So sometimes in my work, I'll combine those two disciplines for clients. I mostly lead from the mental health perspective. Um, Yeah, I kicked off the Precarious podcast, he corrected me, which is great, February 2020. And the notion behind it is to explore the precariousness of life, the precarious nature of life. And that came out of my living with end stage cancer, which in the couple of years I've met with you, there's been lots of developments there. But when we first met, I had received the information that as the cancer was recurring, it was pretty clear that I was most likely going to, die from this disease. And so the podcast is a combination of me having monologues, just sharing kind of real time experiences about what I'm going through, lots of reflection, kind of a lot of philosophical, existential wonderments about life and meaning and purpose. I tend to be really vulnerable. I'm not declaring, these are the ways to do life because I'm some sort of guru. I'm just a person going through something really, really scary and hard. And then I have guests. And the guests, really, since meeting with you, have really been this sort of evolution. It's been interesting. My intention was never to make this about cancer. This wasn't going to be a podcast that was about cancer. It was about humanity, and that we all go through hard things, and we all really, if we think about it, come to understand that life is pretty precarious. And so I just had a wide variety of people on. I'm still always looking for guests, which is one of the things I hope is a takeaway as people are listening. I'm not necessarily needing or wanting notable people, right? I mean, I've had some of those people on, and that's fun, but it's really about just connecting as humans, and talking about how facing hard things have affected us and changed us, and not maybe always for the good. This is not some sort of rainbows and unicorn thing either. This is just, life's hard, and let's share our stories, because the other big takeaway I'm hoping listeners would get from the podcast is you're not alone. As alone as you feel in your hard thing, you're not. And so my hope is that as we share our stories, you feel a little less alone in the hard stuff.
I mean, talk about the best time to. I knew that when I virtually met you, I was like, I knew something was going on because I had already had a couple of friends. I had one friend pass away in November of 2019 of COVID before we even knew what the heck it was.
Oh my God.
And then another friend get very, very, very sick, and my ex-husband get very, very sick in December of 2019. And I was like, something messed up is going on. And I don't know, what it is, but it's not good. And so then, I got introduced to you, and I was like, well, what perfect timing for a show like this. I mean, you launch and then the next month lockdown,
I know, right? Like, exactly. There was a universal experience we were all having around the precarious nature of life that I didn't even know, right? I mean, it was like around the corner. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just been a interesting ride ever since. And, the things that we learn through these challenges, and I've learned so many things about myself, good things, not good things. Things I need to work on that I have been working on, and the stuff that happens when you go in a different direction with your life that's more authentic and happy and loving and joyous for you. And that doesn't mean that there isn't the opposite of those things going on in your life, but you're still going in this joyous, I know, you know what I mean, but but then having people show up that they don't want you to go there because they're more comfortable with you in this other stage of development that you were in, that you're done with. And you're just like, I don't think I can be friends anymore. Nothing bad about you, but we're not vibing. And I'm not going to be that for you anymore because I'm going to go do this. And I'm sorry that you think that this that I'm doing is like me going down a bad path, but it's been so eye-opening. And to do all that and try not to be judgmental about people that are judging me is really hard.
Right. I think it's human nature to feel threatened. And so
Yeah.
I think of this as in my own development, facing mortality issues and
Right.
I get super curious. And then as my work as a mental health provider, obviously, but I get really curious about why we struggle so much as humans to make that shift without regressing. Like, I guess my point is there will always be moments where our not best selves tend to show up.
Right.
And I just think I think ego is part of it. And I think we
Oh, yeah.
demonize ego as well. And it's sort of a natural thing. I think what you're saying, which I love, is that as long as we recognize when that pops up, like when we recognize when we're being judgy or our not best selves are leading, I mean, that's the best we can hope for, because then we can try to do something about it.
Right. 'Cause then there's this awareness and like,
Yeah.
I don't really, it's interesting too, to be like, okay, this thing that's been an Achilles heel for me is rearing its ugly head. Kristin, you have the tools to talk yourself away from behaving this way or
Yeah.
thinking these thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
So get to work
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
on
Mm-hmm.
that thing that you know how to do that
Yeah.
gets you. And it can be like, oh, I'm going to this dark zone about someone or something or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And it literally can be,
Yeah.
I'm out of that.
Yeah.
And I can look at it and go, oh my God, even 5 years ago, that would have taken me months.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then before that, I wasn't even aware.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's a little bit of a mind screw, I think, because here we are with mental health and you're like, I want to trust my mind and my feelings and so on. But you know what? Sometimes they're wrong.
Yeah, that's been for me as a teacher in this field, right? Educating clients. And yeah, that's a bit of a dilemma, because on the one hand, we talk so much about trusting your intuition and paying attention and, kind of lean into that. But on the other hand, absolutely, we should understand that the mind tells lies. I think the process is being able to understand and delineate, right? To be able to, like, is this a time where I lean into these thoughts and feelings and understand that this is the wisdom coming out and this is truth? And then when do I understand, like, what's the difference between that state of mind and the state of mind that is, lying to me? And I think that's the work. I think that understanding the difference between the two is one of the goals of kind of I don't know. There's no finish line on this work, but if we get better at it, which is what I heard you just say, at one point you weren't even aware, then you were aware, but you still got sucked in for months at a time, and now you're noticing you still get hooked, but you're more able to kind of get out of it.
Yeah, and I think if I was more shallow, less intelligent, not a female, having been through all the things that female, I mean, blah, 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 it would have been easier for me. But then those have been the things that have been the grist for the mill with me to really learn a lot of really good stuff. I mean, I don't know. It gets to the point where there's some meme out there, I know, that's like, you are mentally well, or you've got this when you see the sides of everything. And I'm completely butchered that, but you know what I'm saying. I'm okay, I'm understanding where this person is coming from. What's the psychology behind this?
Right.
What's motivating them? And how, for me, some of the worlds that I've dipped my toe in, or even dipped my whole leg in, but not the rest of me, were so toxic, and I could have used all this psychology that I've had since going to therapy at 12, and all these horrible things that have happened, and great things too. I could have used it to be really awful with people and taken advantage of people so many times. And I'm glad that I have always gone, no, I'm not going to go there. I don't want to be that person.
Yeah, it's right. Learning to recognize the complexity, the duality that just exists in this world, right? And so, again, I feel like it's the default easy path is to look through the lens that says right, wrong, black, white. So I appreciate that you're saying part of your process has been to learn to really sit with, maybe there's no right way, no right answer, and then what I heard you talk about, because I'm going to go here because it's a big piece for me, is not that you said this word, so you might laugh and say, no, not quite, Leah, but it's a portal for me to actually then find compassion. In other words, I can look through this lens of complexity at whatever's going on. I find myself being hooked by someone, or, not show up as my best self because I'm somehow being threatened. And it's easier for me to judge and make them the other, and make them the bad person, and make them the one that did something wrong. And when I do what you're talking about, which is back up and say it's way more complex than that, and that I have to, hold space for why, for me, this is hard to be with, and what might be going on for them, then I think what really helps me unhook kind of almost entirely is compassion for me, compassion for that person, compassion for stuff I don't even know.
Right.
Just sort of
overall general, instead of generalized anxiety, it's generalized compassion.
Yeah. No, like, right.
Totally.
We all have shit. We all have blind spots. We all have some really hard stuff. And again, it's not about globally forgiving and forgetting. Right. I'm not saying that. But it's, for me, honestly, it's selfish. Like, I don't want to suffer anymore. I don't want to suffer. So if it's easier for me to unhook and let go and not engage, and that meets my needs, then the way I'm going to do it is the way you're talking about, which is just basically, understand that I don't need to overinterpret what might be going on. I don't need to dive into whatever that thing is between me and that other person, or whatever it may be. I don't need to. And I don't need to other them, and I don't need to blame them. And I also don't need to do that either to get away. I just need to kind of have a sense of release. And I do that through compassion. So
absolutely. And I realized too, as I started doing that, oh my God, a lot of this stuff of diving into a mess that either someone's handing you, or that you've created, or you've both created, or you had nothing to do, whatever it is, diving into a mess for me was a way to avoid myself. It was addicting. I mean, my God, it's such an addiction to, jumping into other people's stuff and then calling it some sort of martyr, I didn't call it that, but that's really what it was. Which runs deep. And the women in my family, man, we got the martyr thing down pat, let me tell you. Generations of martyred women who have been through horrible stuff. So like, but boy, can we carry that martyr thing well. So it's been, I like to give like real life examples. So I'm going to just give a very a short one to what we're talking about.
Sure.
So I had the pandemic and everything changed everything, how I look at everything. This network, I finally just recently made it a nonprofit, which was a fight because the US government was like, well, podcasting cannot be a nonprofit. It just was a lack of understanding, but that's all done now. But I had some people come in that they're like, okay, well, the pandemic is over now, and so you need to get back to where you were making me a lot of money.
Okay. Wow.
And and then telling me all the ways that I did everything wrong, and and being able to sit through those conversations for as long as I wanted to learn something, to be aware while someone is saying something unpleasant that really doesn't have anything to do with you, but you're still the one receiving it. And to be able to like have the wherewithal to say to myself, as these conversations are going on, this isn't about me.
Right.
But I'm going to compassionately listen to this person because they're coming from fear.
Right. Mhm.
about what's going on in their life, and you know, and then walk away from that going, okay, what you've done in the past, get defensive, get angry, whatever.
Yeah.
Don't have the energy for that. There's stuff going on in my personal life. People really need me, life and death kind of things. And
Mhm.
I'm not martyring myself, but that's legit what's going on. And
Mhm.
so I'm just gonna operate from, they're scared. I've been scared too
Yeah.
about those kinds of things. And so I'm just gonna let that go, and not let that program my operating system that I'm enjoying differently. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Oh yeah, it was a great. I was about to say, let's talk about examples. That was beautifully illustrative of what we were just talking about. Yeah, exactly. It's like you were able to say, okay, wow, my first reaction is to be defensive and protect myself and, get ready to fire back. And then you were able to sort of zoom out far enough to say, I'm going to look at this reaction through the lens of clearly something's going on for them, looks like threat and fear. I can have compassion for that. I can also not spend much time, getting hooked by this because I know what my values are, what's important to me at this point in my life, where I want my energy to go. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, did you experience, any time at any point when you've had a diagnosis that you didn't want,
Mhm.
have you at any point had people in your life that became irrationally upset with you because of what it meant to them?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's pretty common, I think, in
Yeah,
a life-threatening disease or health condition that others around you, people who are close to you, I mean, there's kind of memes and jokes about this too, like all the things that people
right.
say that are actually hurtful in the attempt to say
Yeah,
something kind and loving. And I used to have zero tolerance for it, but now I see it again through the lens of this is clearly really triggering, and I get it. Right, like who wants to have to face the fact that I'm probably going to die on them or suffer in front of them or whatever is coming up
right.
for them as they hear what's happening for me. And it used to really hurt because I would just take it personally, like, really? I'm the one. Hello.
Yeah,
I'm the one
yeah,
who's in need of being held, and I really need you to hold space for me, and I really need you to have self-awareness so you don't say shit like that, and 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 now it's like, okay, to put myself in their shoes, it's I wouldn't know what to say either, and I would be
yeah.
fumbling, and all my fear and hurt and sadness would be leaking out, and that's what I'm witnessing. Um, and I have to protect myself. And so I'm not going
Right,
to then go rescue that person because I've tried to do that
right.
before. I
Oh my
can't. It's like
God.
I
Yeah,
also
me too.
need, if you can't show up for me now, I have understanding about that. And I also can't really be around it. So please don't take that personally either, right? So it's
Yeah,
really about it's really about me trying to take care of me first and set boundaries in a loving, kind way. I think Brene
right,
Brown says something like, um, clear is kind. And I think what she means by that is boundaries aren't something to be interpreted as mean spirited or unloving, right? They're really designed to be um, healthy. And so I just have really grown through this to know that my boundary setting in relationship is so important for my well-being. And ultimately, not that I'm, the keeper of the relationship, but healthy boundary setting is good for everybody. So,
right. Oh my God. So, and doesn't matter whether it's your child, whether it's your friend, your mom, a coworker. I mean, boundaries are important,
yeah.
all over the place. And that's I mean, as I was growing up, the women in my, and the men too, boundaries were something that you're a horrible person for having boundaries. Like, you
Hmm.
are in trouble if
Right.
you dare have a boundary. So I didn't even know what the hell that or was in so many ways. And now I'm like, yeah, no.
Mhm.
And that I'm not responsible for letting someone else off the hook
Right.
for, like someone sends me an email and they're just in the throes of whatever they're going through, and I'm the person that they're focused on about this thing that really doesn't have anything to do with me. I don't have to answer that at all.
Right.
And it's not my job to sort of, quote unquote, let them off the hook.
Mhm. Mhm.
I have had people say, well, they're in pain. You have to. And I'm like, no matter what, there's nothing to answer to what was presented to me.
Yeah.
I know
Mhm.
how I would have answered maybe a few years ago, but now, where I'm at now, I don't have answers to what their expectations or their projections or what. I just don't. So the best answer for me is to hopo'opo'ono, if you have
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
heard about
Yep.
that. Yeah.
Mhm.
And just, I love you from afar, and I see that you're in pain. And I'm not saying I'm some, wise Buddha on a mountain that just breathes out and oozes compassion out of every pore. I do not. I struggle every day, lots of moments during the day, but I don't have to engage in
Right.
that stuff. I don't think that it's going to make it better for anybody.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautifully spoken. That's really a huge part of my evolution and process through getting sick and getting clear about what's important to me in the time I have left. And I wish upon everyone, by the way, whoever's listening, don't wait for some terminal diagnosis to do that. Right? Like
Right.
you
I
can do that right now. You can
right.
do that right now. Yeah.
Yeah, because as you get older, and a terminal diagnosis happens whenever,
Yeah. Yeah. It's all going to happen at some
it's
point.
all going to
Yeah.
happen. Yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, I had 11 people in my life die from COVID. So
Wow,
that was a
Kristen.
huge thing
Oh,
to, like, once a month. I mean, it wasn't many happened in the same month, but it
yeah.
was like, I was like,
Wow.
what is going on? And I'm calling this woman who I've said before we recorded that I do the Empowered Empath show, the shaman that I've gone to forever. Like, what is happening? What is this?
Yeah.
And it's an interesting journey. I mean, grief is like, you want to talk about walking around with this coat that's kind of
Hmm.
it. Well, not kind of, it is protective in a way, because there's so many fights that I'm just wasn't willing to, because I didn't have the wherewithal to
Hmm.
join in that I would have before,
Hmm.
because I was overwhelmed with grief, fear,
Yeah.
all these things. And then it became a habit not to get involved in those things. Um, and then now it's like, oh, okay, well, these are good habits. I'm going to keep them.
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah. Sometimes we, are learning by default, right? Actually, most times. I
Yeah.
mean, it'd be nice to say we're setting intention for this personal growth, but usually we're in this very, okay,
Right.
what bus almost just blew me over, and
Yeah.
how do I avoid that again? I'm reeling from that now, so let me take a moment here to figure out how to do this. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was telling you before the show, like, I've spent all this, as many people do, that's what we're here for. We go through all this shit, and we're trying to figure it out and evolve and grow and soul growth and all those things. And the center point of everything has been what I've been going through
Mhm.
forever. And now it's, of course, it's always about what you're going through, because you're you and you're living and breathing and you're here engaged in some way or another. But it's mostly been me being a support system for other people going through life and death situations, and
Mhm.
seeing what that's like, to what
Yeah.
caretaking really is, and how much that tests um, your compassion skills, your patience, your who you are, what you're going to focus on, all those things, to be there for somebody else who's going through a life and death situation.
Yeah. 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 It's um yeah, I have a story about that is a little, I talked about this on my podcast in one of the monologues, but it's still hard for me to talk about, but I feel like I can't help but join you in this because of what you just said. When I was in my late 20s, I fell in love and got married, first marriage, and it swept me off my feet. And, I thought it was my, person, my soulmate, big love.
Forever.
And in so many ways it was, this might be hard for me to talk about. He, within 6 months of our getting married, was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. It was an aggressive, rare form of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And he was a little older than me, but still, relatively speaking, diagnosed fairly young. And I was crushed. I didn't know how to handle it. I was immature. I was 27 or something.
Right. You're a baby.
Yeah. And so I just decided, well, he's not going to die. I'm going to do everything possible to save his life. I just had to feel in control of the impossible. So I took it upon myself to become his caregiver, whether he wanted me to or not. I'm, a good researcher. I got into the literature. I tried to understand this disease. I got in touch with nationally known cancer centers that specialize in this illness. And I would go to his oncology appointments and bring in all this research. And I think I intimidated the oncologist. But basically, I really, really, my mission was that he wasn't going to die on me. Selfishly, it was selfish because I couldn't think about losing him. And so our entire marriage was basically his illness. We ended up, we lived in Colorado. We ended up relocating to Seattle because at that time, Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center was the best in the nation for bone marrow transplants. This was in the late 90s. So we did that. And that was 6 months of scary and, almost dying. And so our whole relationship really became clouded by this role reversal. Well, I shouldn't say reversal. It's just, we switched from being, two loving partners to patient and caregiver. And what ended up happening, to make that long story short, and then sort of talk about what I learned about that, is the marriage didn't survive due to me. And I don't want to be a martyr either, but I feel like in my hindsight of reflecting on where I was in my life and skills I had and how that illness and what I did affected me and us, I ended up leaving. And it's to this day is one of my biggest sadnesses and regrets. And fast forward, 20 years later, I get terminal cancer. And so what I've been living with my current partner is this fear, a little bit like karma, which I don't believe in the traditional definition of karma, by the way.
Me either.
But it was, the irony was not lost on me. And so what happened is I thought about my experiences as a caregiver. And I thought about what it was like to now be the patient and to think and project all my caregiver experiences onto my partner. And so what ended up happening, and I've worked through a lot of this, is I was just waiting for him to leave this whole time, because that's what I did, right? Like, who wants to live in this type of relationship where someone's perpetually sick and probably going to die on you? Now what I can see, what has been really corrective is, first of all, that definition of karma is something I don't believe in. And now what I'm really understanding is that I have grown so much in wisdom because the years have gone by. And I've also learned to try to really trust and relax into, there is truth that someone does have the bandwidth. Maybe I didn't have the bandwidth back then, but it doesn't mean that the person in my life right now doesn't. They do. And I have
Yeah.
so much compassion. I can like now take that experience of me being the caregiver through something really horrific and carry that with me as I watch him try to take care of me without this level of fear that he's going to leave at any moment.
I know. And it's so interesting. It's so interesting to see where you were in your 20s, and then you look at, what you're talking about, where you are now. And when you said, because who would want to sign up for this? And that is what I think a lot of society tells you how you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And really, for me now, this is not how I have been in other iterations of myself, but how I am now is, well, why wouldn't you? Like, you love this person, they're part of your life, whether you don't know if they're going to die tomorrow or in 20, like, maybe you have a more concrete timeline because of a cancer diagnosis, or maybe you don't, like, you just don't know. But the thing that's real is this love. So why would somebody go anywhere,
Right.
But that's, like I said, it took a lot of time to get to that space, because I believed all kinds of lies that I was told in Disney movies and God knows wherever.
Yeah. Exactly.
I had somebody get on my case about, well, why are you, why have you just sort of chucked your life? Well, they said, why have you chucked your life just to, be here for your mom who's going through so much? And I'm like, well, where else would I be? Like, why is that even a question? Like,
Right.
I mean, of course I'm here. It's not out of it. Of what else would I be doing? What do you think? I mean, I posed that question, and I didn't mean it in a mean way. I just was like, I was trying to understand what they were saying to me. And I said, well, what is it that you think I should be doing? Like, what do you think and then I said, and then they told me, well, you should be on TV and you should be doing this and doing stuff you were doing before. And I said, none of what you said is appealing to me. Going and making dinner and enjoying this time that there's a limit to, with dementia and all kinds of things that are going on in our life. That those things are, my God.
Yeah.
I don't care. I care about this dinner I'm going to make tonight.
Yeah.
And that we're going to watch Downton Abbey for the 100th time.
Yeah.
And that we're going to play with the animals. You know what I mean? Like, you just kind of go, oh, and you have these shifts, and people don't understand that, just as you didn't, just as I didn't, until we did.
Yeah. Well, it's very kind of you to remind me that my younger version just wasn't quite ready yet. And so beautiful. I really hear you, because I'm experiencing that in spades right now. And I have over the past 8+ years of living with this illness. I think the sicker I get, the slower my life becomes, and the smaller it gets. It's actually, there's some beauty in that simplicity.
Yes.
And that's what I'm hearing you talk about. Like the richness of the small moments, the meaning packed into the gestures.
Like a whole universe in this singular moment, a
So
whole
beautiful.
universe. And you're
So
like,
beautiful.
oh my God, I wouldn't have even noticed the fringes of that universe a year ago, 5 years ago, whatever. And now I'm like, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah.
It's kind of nice. I see the after effects of it, or the daily effects of it, and how much more open to moments I am, that I just didn't have the whatever to pay attention. And now I'm like, just going to the local grocery store and chatting or whatever. I have all these moments where I'm like, that is like 10 years of shite that I paid attention to back then, that was so not important, that I missed out on. And I'm like, God, I wonder what it would have been like to be born into, a space where you're taught how important those things are. But that kind of isn't especially not what Western society tells me.
Yeah. Life is a race, and the way you're going to win is by, busyness and accumulating, and success is defined by status and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And in order to make that dream come to fruition, you are not paying attention to pretty much anything around you except anything that kind of advances you towards that finish line. And I'm so glad I'm not
Yeah,
doing that anymore.
doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And isn't it funny? Like I think about it, like when I've got 2 dogs that sleep with me all night long. And I'm like, if the moment that I open one eye in the morning, they've been staring at me, God knows how long, waiting for me to freaking wake up. And the minute like one eyeball opens, they're staring at me.
Mhm.
Just like, oh my God, you're awake. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I've been here
Love
all
you.
night
Yeah.
long. Why is this so important? And I can't fathom that
Yeah.
all the times that I picked up my phone and ignored those looks
Yeah.
and that what they were giving me, I ignored. I put a barrier to because I had to check my phone for one
Yep.
freaking reason or another that was
Yeah.
so not that I don't even remember today. But I'll tell you
Yeah.
what, I will remember their eyes.
Yeah. I know. That's exactly
It's
what I'm
just
talking about.
bizarre.
It's so enriching and so, to me, just beautiful, these moments. I mean, but here's what I think we're both saying is they're around us all the time, 24/7,
Right.
to be soaked up and to dive in head first and to open up and be porous about, and I don't know what other kind of synonyms about encouraging people to do this. They're around us all the time, all the time. And so, to me, I'm so stoked about making sure I keep enough space in my life so I can experience that numerous times a day, and
Yeah.
feel a little sad if I didn't experience it enough. And then it's a good self check if I somehow forgot to pay attention or somehow thought that other thing was more important. You can't get those moments back. That you can't. So
No, and I was trying to think of what introduced me to those things to even have an opening to them because there's just barrier after barrier after barrier to that from the time you're born, right?
yeah.
There's just
Mhm.
one thing after another that hits you that tells you, not to look at those things. And for me, the things that, you know, had me do that or opened me up to having more of these experiences and knowing, oh, yeah, right, that's important, not this, but
Mhm.
that it was animals
Mhm.
from
Mhm.
the time I was a little kid, animals and senior citizens. Those are the
Mhm.
two things, just those two things. I always was around dogs, my
Mhm.
God,
Mhm.
eating dog food with the dog, whatever. Having fleas, getting worms. I mean,
Mhm.
just every way. I'm like, my mom's like, really? Again,
Yeah.
what are you doing with these dogs? But that, and then hanging out with like my neighbors or whoever were closer to my age now, and just being utterly fascinated with their lives and hanging out with them and playing card games and my grandma, and those were the things that
Yeah.
made me have that opening. And I'm so glad that I had them as a kid because I have a touchstone of what's
Yep. I
really
was
important
gonna
that was
say,
ingrained at such a young age.
yeah, you have a point of reference. You have this,
Yes.
yeah, this knowing, a feeling that deep inside of you. So you know what it's like when you're doing it, and you know what it's like when you're not.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. That right there. That's what I'm gonna.
Yeah.
That's one of the many nuggets from this conversation. The things that you've said, like, yeah, the point of reference, knowing when I'm not in that space, uh, and detaching my emotions that get called up. Like um what bleeds in that I'm not really even paying attention to, where I feel like shit
Yeah. Yeah.
and going, oh, okay, pay attention, stop it sooner. Don't let
Yeah.
it get like into your heart. Like it can get under your skin a little bit, but quickly remember, no, I don't want to go that way, and not letting it get like way in deep into your zorch where you're like, okay, I need a shaman, some crystals, and some ayahuasca to get me out of this shit,
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. You're like, let's stop the bleeding sooner than later. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think too, I wanted to ask you this, we're taught, especially in mental health and being in therapy, intense therapy so young, really trained my brain to analyze and stuff, which I'm grateful for. But we're kind of taught in that mental health realm, question, 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 why is this happening? What are your reactions? Blah, 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 blah. It tell people what's going on, share what's going on, get it out of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all true. And I totally believe that. And I also see this other side of that, which is, being quiet
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
not, but, and I notice when I'm bleeding on other people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in a way that isn't really fair to them. Not that I don't mean that like, you shouldn't share with your friends. I don't mean it like that. No, I just know when I'm overwhelmed and I need help and I'm bleeding on people in a way that might be uncomfortable. It probably is uncomfortable for them. And for me to recognize it and go, okay, I need to like get back to my center. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. And right. So that it's again similar to what we talked about at the beginning, I think, of our conversation, is sort of knowing kind of the whens and the what fors and what's going on. So in other words, using intention, in other words, to be able to tune in to what's going on and recognize your overwhelm and you're leaking and bleeding and feeling. Well, let me use a specific example. So this exact thing happened to me probably about a month, 6 weeks ago. My level of anxiety about what was going on with my disease was off the hook. And I've had many periods of that over the years. I was just in one of them, and it hadn't happened in a really long time. And it caught me off guard. I was completely hijacked by my panic and my fret and my physical experience of anxiety and my sort of, I don't know, feeling terrified, that I was sort of desperately reaching into my support system for grounding. And I could see, and these are very talented, wise, unshakable people. Thank God I've got these people in my life, but I still saw through the look in their eyes what I was doing. I was like, I was some version of myself that they hadn't seen. And I've had, shit hit the fan a lot. And I could tell I was unhinged. Right. And
yeah, when they're like, you are Gollum, that's when you know there's a problem.
So it took me a while to come down. And again, I have a lot of compassion for what was happening to me, but I also came full circle and said to each one of them, I have appreciation for how I was showing up. And I want to tell you how grateful I am that you were able to hold that space and stood there. And I'm sorry. Again, no need to apologize. And yet I felt the need to say, listen, I know you're telling me not to be sorry, but I just need to say to you that I have compassion for what that might have been like for you to be with me when I was in this place that I just couldn't find the ground underneath my feet and couldn't, contain and hold. So I hear you. And so I learned a lot from that. I learned that I think next time that happens, because there will be a next time, this idea that you're coming up with, what you're saying about kind of going inward and trying to find stillness, right? And then reach out to, for me, my takeaway is, and then reach out to my support people, right? And be able to, engage with them in a way that is going to help. Because what ended up happening is all I did was push their helplessness buttons. Like there was nothing they could do to soothe me. That's how unhinged I was. And so, I agree that and this is a big ask for all of us working on our personal growth, because when we're unhinged, it's real. I'm not shaming any one of us, by the way, to say that is somehow pathological and you're super screwed up. I'm saying it's real. It happens. And that finding agency within ourselves, using our tools to find stillness and try to find the ground underneath our feet and engage with the people that help us do that.
Yeah. I think of it too. And I've been dancing around this, not really able to find the nugget, and having this conversation with you. I feel like I've found the nugget now for me. And I'm not saying this is a nugget for anyone else.
Yeah.
For me, it's this thing of really, okay. You always put everybody else first, and you did it from a selfish perspective. You've done it for all these other things. But now we're getting to like, how do I age for however long I'm still going to have this experience as Kristin? How do I do that and hopefully have learned how to be there for myself?
Yes.
How to be my friend.
Yeah.
How to be my friend.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that stillness to me is, I feel like, okay, that is me. Like, I can be unhinged with myself all day long and I'm not going anywhere because I'm me, right? It's in me. But if I can help myself get to that place, now here's all these tools. I know how to do it. And then, like you said, then go to my friends and family and, whoever I go to, then what I've taught myself, again, making it a habit, making it the go-to, the place I go to, not the place I just visit every so often when I remember,
right.
Is, okay, that's right. You're my friend, Kristin.
Right. Yeah.
So you need comfort, and the best person who knows you better than anyone is you.
Yeah.
So go to her, because she's wise.
Yeah. Beautifully said. No, it's very true. Very, very true.
So,
yeah.
Yeah. I don't even know what we'll title this show. Like,
there's a lot. I have to reflect on the threads that have been pulled through this one.
see, these things are so important to me, these conversations, like, mean every show that I don't care about interviewing notable people at all anymore, because I'm like, what does notable mean?
Yeah.
Unless and sometimes somebody comes in and they are quote unquote notable, and I do an interview ahead of time. Do I really want to talk to this person because my time is so limited? I know you understand what I'm saying, that it's just like, it takes me this journey to even be able to record physically, because of living where I live and no internet access. It's decent, whatever. So I want to have I want to cry a little bit. I want to have epiphanies. I want to have this feeling that I have right now. That's what I want, because that's worth, all these hoops I got to jump through to even record a show.
Yeah. Well, likewise. That's exactly what I'm going for, or those kind of honest and transparent and authentic connections and conversations about being human.
Absolutely. Well, we'll figure it out. I'll play with titles and we'll figure it out. Listeners, you'll know, because by the time this airs, we'll have come up with what the hell we're going to do this show. But Leah, thank you so much. It's been far too long, and I know I don't need to apologize, because that would be like you having to apologize. We don't, just life came into play. But I'm glad that we've connected back up. So tell listeners where they can find out more about you.
Yeah. Well, I have a website, leahbarrett.com. That's LEHBARRETT.com. And there is about me, my private practice, but there's also a link to the Precarious podcast there.
Which is
that's the
so
fastest
good.
way. Yeah. And I am on social media, but as we talked about at the beginning of the show, yes, you can find me on all the platforms, but mostly I think if you hit my website, you'll access all of those different outlets.
Right. Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on, and I hope that we will be able to do more.
Yeah, me too. It was such a joy, Kristin. Thank you.
Thank you. Listeners, thank you for tuning in. We're going to have this on Mental Health News Radio and also on Empowered Empaths. Thanks for joining us.
But will you ride the low, low, lows with me? Will you ride the low, low, lows with me?
One thing you can always count on at Mental Health News Radio Network and my show is that there will always be dogs around. Why? They are natural healers, excellent for your mental health. The original therapy dog Miles has something to say in just a moment. For now, please check out all of our amazing shows at mentalhealthnewsradionetwork.com and all your favorite podcast apps. Until next time, I'm Kristin Sananta Walker, and thank you for listening.
Me tonight, and I can ride the low, low, lows with me. I can ride the low,